Yesterday, somebody called into the program and said that they had heard that thousands of Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines, given the winter is setting in and everything, have just been melting away, basically, deserting. And I didn't know if that was Russian propaganda, if that's just crap that happens during war always, if that is a big problem for the Ukrainians right now.
Well, it is happening in the thousands, in multitudes. No, I think that's exaggerated.
Yeah.
They certainly aren't coming through the urban centers, and I'm not just talking about Kiev, because I have friends that I speak to daily out in Kharkiv, Dnipro, Zaporizhia, Odessa, even Lviv, Lutsk, Ivano-Frankivsk, the major urban centers. We don't see an influx of former soldiers or deserters transiting through these urban centers. And there is no indication, soldiers that we do talk to on the front lines, that they are losing their comrades in the quote-unquote thousands.
Yeah.
It's a problem. It's something that's going to have to be addressed. Equally, mobilizing and conscripting more soldiers is going to be something that is going to have to be addressed. I spoke to a young man who is of fighting age now that the age limit has dropped, and he has said, look, I try to avoid police streets checking that ID, that you're up to date on your mobilization numbers and you're registered and things like that. He said, I myself have run from them. It is not from a lack of will to fight. It's the fact that, nobody wants to die for a losing cause. Who wants to be the last soldier who dies for a losing cause, sort of thing? That kind of mentality. Like, if you give us the weapons, if you provide us with the infrastructure to fight and fight properly, we will fight. The problem is there has been such a lack of the delivery of promised, most importantly, equipment, weaponry, and ammunition that has some Ukrainian men saying, until we are able to fight, I'm not just going to throw myself at this thing.
Which brings up, I get it. It brings up a couple of headlines. A couple of headlines I've seen lately. Number one, that the French and the British have committed a whole lot more weaponry. Joe Biden just committed, I think, $700 million worth of additional weaponry. Not inconsequential. Obviously, all this stuff should have happened years earlier, frankly. But nonetheless, here we are. There was also a headline at the top of Drudge day before yesterday that said Zelensky says, "I'll give up land." Trump is coming into office, in roughly 6 weeks or 7 weeks. What's the state of the war right now? And also the New York Times is reporting yesterday that the Russians have been quite successful in grabbing more land. What's the state of the war right now, and how do you think this is going to resolve itself as Trump comes into office, or will it?
Well, two things. Firstly, to clarify what Zelensky said, and not a lot of people have. This was widely advertised in an interview that he did with a British news organization, my old pal Stuart Ramsey. And in that, he said, I would be willing to trade, settle for a ceasefire or a cessation of hostilities where the lines are, and in essence, yes, acquiesce to the lands that Russia has taken by force of arms. But but I would pursue those lands by negotiation. So to use the parallel that I always use, which is the British-Irish conflict, it would be like the British, or rather the Irish Republic saying, yes, we will give you Ulster back. You can maintain Northern Ireland. But then look how that turned out. It's still part of Britain, but there was years and years of conflict, right, and struggle and all that kind of thing. They're not just going to simply walk away from the lands that are occupied, but in order to stop the fighting, what Zelensky calls the hot war, where people are dying on a daily basis, that he would agree to some sort of ceasefire or armistice or a cessation of hostilities. Right. So let's, first and foremost, let's get now. That is a move for Zelensky. That's new. That's new talking. That's new. It's a new position. But it is not. Because he can't. He can't just say we're going to give up the lands that were taken by the Russians and for peace. There are too many people, for example, from the city of Mariupol, who are displaced internally within Ukraine. Now, I've spoken to a lot of Ukrainians who also say there are sections of the occupied territories that have been occupied for so long, in particular the cities of Donetsk and Luhansk, where in essence they've been gone for 10 years. They're indoctrinated into Russian mentality, and I've heard lots of my Ukrainian friends saying, in essence, they have become Russian. So we might have, to stop the bloodshed, we might be willing.
Right, Russia's been giving them passports. They're subject to Russian media. They're Russian teachers in their schools.
Their pensions.
Right. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, their pensions are paid by Moscow, that sort of thing. And then the second point, which I've lost my train of thought on, you were asking about the possibility that Zelensky would give that up. Oh, and the Trump, and I mean, I think I think the Ukrainians are preparing for a Trump administration that will not be favorable to them. There is concern that he is more. I mean, just look at the meeting between Zelensky and Trump during the UN General Assembly. Where Trump said, "I have a good relationship with Putin," and Zelensky said, "I hope our relationship with you is better." And they kind of, Trump, in his typical bellicose way, kind of said, well, it takes two to tango, sort of thing. They're prepping for it. They're aware of it, but they're still not going to give up the struggle for regaining that territory, because if things are left the way they are right now, it lays the ground for a further conflict down the road. Russia will be able to step back, restructure its army, and prepare for another attack. That's the prevalent thinking here in Ukraine. But it also has to be mentioned, and I'm back to producing edition with a very interesting gentleman who was a former financier in the Russian oil and gas industry, a Russian national who has escaped and is in exile in Uzbekistan, and he is a very savvy businessman and very knowledgeable about Russia's economic situation. And it needs to be mentioned that Russia's economy is almost in complete free fall. The ruble to the dollar is over 100 to the dollar, so pennies for rubles. Their primary state-run industry, its stock, Gazprom, is plummeting. They're in really, really bad shape, and we discussed that, and so I encourage people to tune in on Sunday when we release this next episode, when I speak with Konstantin Samolyov from the YouTube channel Inside Russia, and it's he is a very savvy Russian who lays out the point that the defeat of Russia may not come on the battlefield; it may come in the markets.
Interesting. Yeah, my sense of it is that Putin's skating on very, very thin ice right now domestically. And particularly now that he's being distracted in Syria, with Aleppo having fallen.
Well, not just Syria. Look what's happening on the streets of Tbilisi, on the streets of Batumi, on the streets of
Georgia,
in Georgia, in the Republic of Georgia, which is a cornerstone of another cornerstone, not as important as Ukraine or, say, Belarus, but is a cornerstone of their empire, certainly along their soft underbelly, which bumps up against Iran in the Caucasus. And Georgia is very important to their sense of identity as empire as well, and they're going to lose it.
Yeah.
I am amazed to see in a country of 4.7 million people, hundreds of thousands of people are taking to the streets every single night.
People are fed up.
Pummeled by water cannons.
Yeah, people are fed up. Phil, I got to run.
The Russian Empire is collapsing.
Check out Phil's podcast, On the Edge, wherever fine podcasts are available. Thank you, Phil.